Hey everyone, this is Jaron with Christ Before Jesus. I know this is different from what I normally post on here, but today I wanted to talk a little bit about a stylometry run which came out prior to our book. This is a study titled Using Stylometric Techniques to Evaluate New Testament Authorship. This came out in 2012 from Kenneth D. Royal, associated with the University of Kentucky. It is published in the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation. You can find this online, you can read it online for free, but I wanted to dig a little deeper into it. I wanted to do this today because a lot of people have heard us talk about stylometry. Obviously, our book goes over it quite a bit, but there's been some pushback that a lot of people have brought up to me and have heard that says, hey, stylometry actually isn't reliable at all, or just isn't reliable when dealing with ancient texts such as the Bible. So the very fact that we actually have this study shows that, as early or late, depending on how you want to view it, as 2012, Christians have been using stylometry to try to say that the books line up with their Christian tradition. So here is the study. It goes over the distance formulas, and here is a graph. It's a map of stylometric analysis run. I know that this looks kind of weird. It's a whole bunch of letters scattered all over this graph here. Don't worry, we're not going to go through all of them. We're primarily going to focus on the ones found in the upper left quadrant. Here is table 1. It is the legend for that map. Again, we're primarily going to focus on the positive loadings, and even then, only the first 6 letters. So from A to F, Matthew, all the way down to Revelation. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to show this legend on the right side of the screen when we take a look at the map. So in the study, right before the map, Kenneth Royal places a section known as Results and Discussion, and this is where a lot of the findings are actually discussed. So it says the results of this study yield a number of interesting findings. First, the 6 narrative books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, and Revelation, are clustered relatively close together. And yeah, there's some truth to that. Obviously, we're looking at things in the upper left quadrant, and those are all in there. Where Royal goes awry, however, is in his next statement. He says that there's some stylometric evidence in support of the idea that Luke and Acts are written by the same author, and even shown by his map, that's not necessarily the case. When we look at the map, Luke isn't actually that close to Acts. In fact, Acts is much closer to Revelation and basically on top of the Gospel of John. Royal goes on to explain the synoptic problem, the idea of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all being closer together, and that somewhat explains why they're showing up together on the map. But it takes a turn for the worse whenever Royal tries to say that the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation were written by the same author. He says in the last sentence here, empirical stylometric evidence, however, might suggest that the same author wrote both texts. So, to recap, what Kenneth Royal's interpretation of this graph is that E and F are the same authors because they're close together. C and D are also the same authors because they're relatively close together, but he would never say that D and E were the same author. That's the book of Acts and the Gospel of John. So this actually highlights one of the main reasons why I wanted to record this video. Very clearly, Christians want to use stylometric analysis to confirm their beliefs because it's accurate. But this either shows a lack of understanding on Kenneth Royal's part, or he's just being disingenuous. I'd also like to quickly remind everyone that the way that my co-author Matthew and I run our research is at the chapter level. The reason why they're getting these particular results in this study is because of the fact that they're running entire books. Let me explain. What we see here is that A, B, and C are virtually next to each other. That's Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But if Christian tradition, or Kenneth Royal, should be believed, then C and D, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, should basically be on top of each other. But they're not. Even if you want to say that Luke and Acts should not be close together because one is a gospel and one is just a narrative story about what happens to the apostles later, well, Acts and the Gospel of John shouldn't be that close together either. I understand that John is not a synoptic gospel, but if John and Revelation are so close that they're the same author, then how are John and Acts not the same author? The problem is that the Gospel of Luke includes 2 main authors, the author of Acts, and then the source material that author used in order to create Luke, which is the gospel known as Evangelion, published by Marcion in roughly about 144 CE. If my co-author and I are right, then the Gospel of Matthew is a simple response to Evangelion. The Gospel of Mark is likely a play version of Evangelion, and the Gospel of Luke utilizes Evangeline as its main source. This would mean that A, B, and C should show up closer together, while D, E, and F don't have that much in common. For anyone who's interested in what the rest of this graph shows, it goes over the later epistles found in the New Testament. Our chapter-level stylometric analysis shows us that one author is responsible for bits and pieces of just 4 of the epistles. These are Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and Galatians. While we do not believe that this author is the 1st century Paul as presented by the New Testament, and we get into the reasons for this, we can at least find this author using stylometry. To no surprise, Kenneth Royal's book-level stylometry shows us Galatians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and Romans all in the bottom left quadrant. Capital L and lowercase j are the books of Hebrews and 1st John, respectively. According to scholars, neither one of these books has anything to do with the authentic Paul. In conclusion, while stylometric analysis is not perfect, it is still incredibly accurate. Christians have been using it for years, erroneously claiming that the authorship of the text lines up with their tradition. It's only here recently, with the technological advancements of stylometry, where we're able to take a look at the chapter level and see the problems in the New Testament, that we've started to hear so much negative feedback. So yet again, I urge you, whether it be a scholar, some random TikTok or YouTube video, or my co-author Matthew and I, don't take our word for it. Dig deeper, look at the evidence, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And hopefully, you'll be able to filter out some of the negative feedback and the religious gaslighting from the claim that stylometry was never trusted or accurate.